Okay, we're going to begin with our question. What is the science of salmon? As we explore that question, we're going to look more deeply at life cycles. Not just the life cycle of a salmon, but also the life cycle of a plant and the life cycle of another animal, human animal. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how our life cycle is similar to that of the salmon, and also how the salmon impacts our life cycles, because we know the salmon is an indicator species for the health of the watershed, which means it tells us if our watershed is healthy. And healthy water and a healthy watershed is very important for both plants and animals. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the life cycle of a plant. So here's a life cycle of a tomato. Begins with a seed that grows into a young plant, that grows into a mature plant, which then develops a flower, which then develops into a fruit, which then has more seeds. So the life cycle continues, just like with the salmon. It's never ending. The life cycle of a human even more closely looks like the life cycle of a salmon. Begins with an egg that is fertilized, which grows and grows to a baby, and then to a child, and then to an adolescent or a teenager, then to an adult, and from there the life cycle can continue on when another egg is fertilized, grows into a baby, grows into a child, grows into a teen, grows into an adult. So it continues on, very much like the salmon life cycle. So let's take a look at the salmon life cycle. It too begins with an egg that grows into an alevin, that grows into a fry, that grows into a fingerling or a par, which grows into a smolt, which grows into a young adult, and then to a spawner, which then lays and fertilizes eggs. And so again, the life cycle continues. So all life cycles are never ending. They continue. They begin and they end, but they never stop because new generations keep happening. So let's look closely at the life cycle of a salmon. So we'll begin with the egg stage. The eggs of salmon are slightly translucent, which means you can see through them, and about the size of a pencil eraser. They are laid in gravel nests at the bottom of stream or river beds. If you remember, those nests are called redds, R-E-D-D-S, redds, and they're made of gravel. And the way the salmon make those nests is they use their tail fins to dig a hole, they deposit their eggs in the hole, they fertilize the eggs, and then they use their tail fins to brush the gravel back over the eggs to protect them. And you might remember this from the eggs in the tank. The eggs are red to pink in color and take 2 to 3 months to hatch. And as they're growing inside the egg, at first you can see the eye. And then pretty soon you can see 2 eyes. And even sooner after that, they emerge. And then they are in this stage, the alevin stage. When ready, the baby salmon will break free from the egg's soft shell. They retain the yolk as a nutrient-rich sac that hangs below its body. Over the next month, they feed from this sac while remaining hidden. At this stage of the life cycle, they are known as alevin and are about 1 inch in length. You remember we measured them, they're about 2.5 centimeters long. And from the stage of the alevin, they become fry. In the next stage of their life, they are known as fry. They now take the shape of a fish. The fry leave their gravel nest and begin to swim and feed themselves. Now is the time to take the first part of their journey downstream, as they are vulnerable. That means they're in danger of predators and other things that could harm them. They hide under rocks and among vegetation. That means in the plants, avoiding their predators. And from the stage of fry, they move into the par stage or the fingerling stage. As the fry feed and grow, they develop vertical markings on the flanks of their bodies. Now they're about 6 inches long and are known as parr. They continue slowly heading towards the ocean, still hiding from predators. It can take the parr around 1 to 3 years before they are ready to venture out into the ocean. This is the next stage, the smolt. The juvenile salmon then start to lose its vertical markings and turns silvery in color. They form large groups and start adjusting their bodies to salt water, ready to swim out into the ocean. This process of adjusting to salt water is known as smoltification. That's where we come up with the word smolt. Smoltification is that process of them changing from having bodies that are great for being in freshwater into bodies that are great for being in saltwater, because freshwater fish are different than saltwater fish. So the smolt, they gather in the estuary. The estuary is where the saltwater and the freshwater mix together. And in that process, they're changing their bodies because they're coming out of the freshwater and they're going to move into the salt water of the ocean. But their bodies have to change or get ready for going out into the ocean. And once they're ready, they become young adult. Salmon may spend anywhere from 1 to 7 years in the ocean, depending on the species. Then they start the homeward journey back to where they hatched, to continue on the life cycle. So this is the young adult, but remember, on their way back, their bodies again change. That's when they often change color, and we call that part of the adult the spawner. It is not known how the salmon know how to get home, but they do it without eating at all. They change color often, their muscles soften, and they die soon after spawning. And when they die, their bodies become food for the plants and the animals that are there. And by becoming food for the plants and the animals, they then help feed their babies. Because when the babies hatch from the egg, and then they use up all their yolk sac, they're going to need to eat. And so with all the food that the spawners have become, new plants, which feeds new insects, will then feed the fry and the parr, or the fingerling, which feeds the other fish, which will feed the smolt, and those other fish will feed the adult. So the life cycle continues. I hope you have a better understanding of the life cycle of the salmon. Later this week, you will complete this activity on your own. Here is a model of the salmon life cycle. We have the eggs, the alevin, the fry, the parr, or the fingerling, the smolt, and the adult. And just remember that the adult, as it leaves the ocean, changes again and becomes the spawner that will lay and fertilize eggs. So you'll have this, and then what I want you to do is I want you to take the black and white one and color it to match. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the salmon.